Hello and welcome. I'm Kelsey Lemon, the Vice President of International Cooperation at the Canadian Red Cross, and I'm pleased to share a brief overview of the International Cooperation team and all that we do. International Cooperation is a division under Humanitarian Services of the Canadian Red Cross. We're driven by Vision 2030, and our purpose is to be a multiplier of impactful, locally led humanitarian action before, during, and after crises. For our international work, we always operate with and through national society partners, the International Federation of the Red Cross, or ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross. We believe in working in the spirit of localization and complementarity. This means ensuring that the local actors are driving decisions about international response tools and where resources are allocated. Working in complementarity means ensuring that we add a unique and needed competency or asset to the response, and that we're not replicating and duplicating what may already be available. As part of the Red Cross movement, we are in a very privileged position to work alongside the most local actors, the national societies, their branches, and volunteers. At the same time, we're able to draw on the enormous power of the global network through the IFRC and the ICRC. When the movement comes together to scale up for a major disaster, it is truly impressive what we can achieve when we're working in a coordinated manner. We work across the disaster risk management cycle to help partners address humanitarian needs and alleviate suffering. This means supporting emergency response, engaging in recovery efforts, working with partners to build resilience, and investing in preparedness and anticipatory action so that partners can mitigate the impact of future crises. As the Canadian Red Cross, we are ready to mobilize and support global partners and their response plans in a variety of ways. This includes through funding with specialized humanitarian personnel, with emergency supplies, and with our humanitarian health services. We have many tools in our toolbox that we can tailor based on what the National Society needs. This could be emergency funds, sending cash to support operations. We can send cash through a variety of channels, and we always assess which is the most efficient way to get funds to the impacted populations. We often go on public appeal for large and very visible disasters, but we also maintain emergency funds for those smaller scale yet equally devastating emergencies that regularly impact communities across the globe. The past year, we deployed Canadian funding to support a variety of emergencies. For example, flood response in Ecuador and South Sudan, and support to population movements in Bangladesh. Another tool we use is emergency personnel. We deploy highly skilled professional humanitarians from Canada, and we support regional deployments so that those closest to the affected area can support the response. This could be an operations manager from Canada, a shelter coordinator from the region, or a health profile. We maintain large rosters of personnel to support surge requests, and we have a focus on operational leadership, health leadership, and response coordination. And of course, we also prioritize protection, gender, and inclusion. Some examples of our recent deployments include health and leadership profiles for the Sudan Complex Emergency Assessment. We deployed a membership coordination profile to Syria. And we've also deployed very recently an operational leader to support preparedness efforts in Haiti. We maintain emergency stocks. We have stocks in 3 warehouses, one in Mississauga, close to Toronto, in Dubai, and in Kuala Lumpur. Our stocks include, for example, blankets, buckets, hygiene kits, and solar lamps. We most recently sent items to the Venezuelan floods operations, and they arrived just last week. Our humanitarian health services can range from public health services to support a cholera outbreak, mental health and psychosocial support services, or clinical services such as mobile clinics or a full field hospital with surgical capacity. Currently, the Canadian Red Cross is supporting an emergency field hospital in Gaza. We've provided equipment, personnel, and funds. And this past year, we've also supported mobile clinic capacity in Afghanistan and a humanitarian health services assessment function for cholera in Sudan. The Canadian Red Cross is known across the Red Cross movement for our leadership in health and emergencies, preparedness for effective response, and operational leadership. We are continuously working to modernize our tools and approaches to meet meet the needs of partners and the communities they serve in a coordinated way before, during, and after a crisis. We do have countries of strategic priorities around the world, and in these contexts we work closely with the National Society to help them respond to and mitigate the impacts of crises or disruptive events. These partnerships can come to be in many ways and are often born out of large-scale disaster, such as Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines or a cholera outbreak in Somaliland. Some examples of our strategic partnerships include Haiti and Honduras in the Americas, Mali and Somaliland in Africa, Ukraine in Europe, Philippines and Nepal in Asia Pacific, and Lebanon and Syria in the Middle East. We work closely with these partners for many years, and we collaborate with them to maximize humanitarian reach and the impact of the Red Cross movement. We are at a critical moment in the humanitarian space. The response landscape is changing. We're seeing more complex events and compounding emergencies. For example, we often see natural disasters in conflict-affected contexts, and then they are later followed by a health outbreak. The Inform Index tells us that as of 2025, the average length of the humanitarian crisis globally is now 9 years, which means we're increasingly dealing with protracted crisis and populations that are experiencing extreme hardship over many years. Simultaneously, we're seeing an increase in capacity at the national and regional level and more activation of global surge support across borders. Our National Society partners are increasingly clear and directive in terms of what kind of supports and assistance they want in a crisis. They are best placed to know what is needed in their domestic space. Therefore, we need to be prepared to adapt and to evolve our response tools to suit the context. There really is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach. We're also seeing available funding decrease, with several global humanitarian donors cutting back. Therefore, we're driven to find efficiencies and do more with less. The contexts where we deploy are increasingly complex. As I mentioned, we're supporting the Red Cross Field Hospital in Gaza. In addition to providing funds and equipment to the field hospital, we've deployed humanitarian experts to support the response. As you can imagine, this is an extremely high-risk deployment, and the Canadian Red Cross takes our duty of care very seriously. This means extensive preparations around security, health clearance, and relying on those with significant experience in complex settings to deploy. Our teams here in Canada coordinate with movement partners daily to ensure safety and security of our personnel. We maintain a network of security counterparts and ensure robust security procedures are in place. As we're being required to do more with less in increasingly high-risk environments, it's becoming more and more critical that we send people with experience collaborating with movement partners on the ground who have strong leadership skills and can build relationships with local national societies. Experience in high-risk and conflict-affected settings is really critical for the work that we do. With this reality, the Canadian Red Cross has adapted and evolved its approach to humanitarian health services. For over 2 decades, the Canadian Red Cross has been frequently called upon to use our emergency response unit capacity to support clinical and surgical services internationally, generally through our emergency field clinic or our hospital. And we're seeing a shift now in what is being requested by our local partners. We're seeing more requests for smaller, more targeted configurations such as maternal and child health, infection prevention and control, and cholera case management, rather than requests for the full field hospital. There's been a deliberate shift in our approach. We focus on being as agile and lightweight as possible, ensuring we're only sending what our partners need and request. With our service-based approach, the Canadian Red Cross will package our available capacity, including people, funds, and equipment, in a tailored way to best support the local needs. With our sophisticated suite of capacities, which include registers of health experts, robust clinical and public health equipment, and technical expertise, we're well placed to tailor our offering to the context. Over the last few years, we've had some tremendously impactful humanitarian health service responses, and I'd love to share some examples with you. Following Hurricane Eta and Iota in 2020, the Canadian Red Cross deployed its field clinic to Honduras during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a long-term partnership with the Honduran Red Cross, and we had already worked with them for many years. This deployment during COVID came with many challenges as we were at the peak of the pandemic, but we were still able to provide life-saving services. The field clinic equipment was handed over to the Honduran Red Cross as they had ambitions themselves to build this service. Our health team worked closely with them over a period of time to build their capacity, and they were recently able to redeploy the field clinic to provide health services after a devastating fire in a hospital. This is a great example to show how surge investments can have sustained impact. The Canadian Red Cross deployed a treatment center in 2017 to Somaliland. Once the situation stabilized, we again handed the equipment over to the Somali Red Crescent and invested in their capacity to respond to health crises. With the equipment and knowledge from this deployment, the National Society continued to respond domestically to health emergencies, and they were among the first in their context to detect COVID cases. We maintain a strong partnership with the National Society, and they continue to respond regularly to health needs. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has devastated healthcare services, leaving people with limited access to essential care as hospitals have been overwhelmed or been destroyed. Working with our movement partners and led by the ICRC, the Canadian Red Cross sent vital surgical equipment, trauma kits, and personnel to support a field hospital deployment. This was a true movement effort with national societies from around the world contributing equipment, funding, and personnel. As of mid-August 2025, the field hospital has conducted 137,000 consultations, more than 7,700 surgeries, and 596 babies have been delivered. This field hospital has been a vital lifeline within such a dire context. Another example is when we recently sent a public health capacity to Comoros, which augmented other emergency response units on the ground after a cholera outbreak. This was a lightweight but high-impact response and demonstrated the modularity of our deployments as well as how they fit into an overall operation. The final example I'll share is Afghanistan. The Canadian Red Cross has a long-term partnership with the Afghan Red Crescent, and we've supported their mobile health clinics, which provide essential health services in extremely hard-to-reach areas. Over the last year, the Afghan Red Crescent has been engaged to support a surge of Afghan nationals returning from Pakistan and Iran. This trend showed a dramatic peak on the 25th of June when over 34,000 people returned from the crossing points into Afghanistan on a single day. The Canadian Red Cross is currently providing equipment, technical expertise, and funding to reinforce local mobile health teams to meet these critical needs. The Canadian Red Cross is proud to be a leader in supporting our movement partners around the world. As the humanitarian landscape continues to evolve, we're committed to adapting our response to ensure we're providing the best possible support to our local partners.